I come from the Met Office down in Exeter, and that's the people that do the weather. Today's session I'm going to be talking about communities of practice and using technology to enable communities of practice to learn. Specifically Totara that we use, but other LMSs are available. So, quick overview of my session. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we come to establish communities of practice, and it's based around kind of the Met Office's strategy, purpose and vision. And from that I'm going to talk around about how we developed a people framework that's influenced how we go about learning within the Met Office, that shaped our learning philosophy, and more importantly kind of how we're developing communities of practice to really support kind of learning in the flow of work within the Met Office. So the Met Office strategy, this was launched about 3 years ago, late 2019, when we was all full of optimism and years ahead. But obviously we all know what happened at the start of 2020, kind of put a bit of a derail in our plans. But the Met Office's strategy is kind of underpinned by these three strategic anchors: excellent people and culture, science, technology and operations, and impact and benefit. Now, I work in people development, and our main focus is within that excellent people and culture anchor. However, we do support work that's going on with the strategic actions in the other two anchors, and what I want to talk to you today about is these three specific ones: developing our employee value proposition, investing in dedicated community of people leaders, and embracing hybrid working, which is kind of very prevalent to us all in today's world of work. So how have we gone about it? So the people framework was seen as a way of providing staff with a tool to enable their personal ownership of development, and it's split into these three areas of being effective at a personal, corporate and professional level. Quick summary of what these three segments are is the personal effectiveness really kind of talked around those softer skills that we kind of, leadership, the time, or people have heard them called power skills, but it's really that kind of softer skills stuff that's quite hard to train and quite hard to develop. The corporate stuff is really around our governance, kind of compliance training, how do you procure stuff. But the bit that really excites me as a people development professional is this personal effectiveness segment, where we've kind of really focused our organisation around how do we link development into business performance. And one of those ways is enabling personal ownership of people's development through identifying career pathways and building organisational capability through having high standards of professionalism within the organisation. But more importantly, using some of the data that we're able to collect through the tools that we use to influence the evidence and based decision making that we make as an organisation, whether that's our future demand management, whether that's our L&D strategies, whether that's our recruitment strategies or talent management strategies. Lots of the data we're starting to extract from the people framework and the tools we use are helping to influence a lot of those decisions within the organisation. So what did we do? So, as part of the professional effectiveness area of the people framework, we stood up 18 professions within the organisation, and within each profession we had some terms of reference that kind of put a bit of governance around those. And part of that governance was each profession needed to be benchmarked to an external body, whether that's, for example, people being linked through to CIPD, or a lot of our, as a civil service organisation, a lot of our professions have civil service frameworks that they can link to, such as the digital technology framework. And within each profession, they also have a head of profession who's accountable for steering that profession, making sure the standards are kept up. But more importantly, and the thing I'm here to talk to you about today, is they are the figurehead of the communities of practice, which is an area that we've kind of really focused on over the last year and a half in developing kind of environment where practitioners from across the organisation and outside of the organisation can come together to kind of work on business problems and talk around kind of their profession and where they're going. And also a place to kind of work through business problems together and share best practice. So what do we do in terms of the communities of practice? So within the people development team, we've kind of brought in these competency frameworks that a lot of these professions align to, and we've used the Totara tool to create individual competency profiles that are linked for every single post within the organisation, and this is a self-assessment tool. So this enables staff to go in and actually assess themselves about where they're supposed to be on their career journey. And what you're seeing here is the yellow line is the proficiency level of where people need to be within their job role, and the blue line is where someone's assessed themselves. And obviously the yellow line then gives you that gap of what development and the areas they need to focus on over the coming year in the job they're in. The work we're currently doing alongside this is to look at aspirational roles. So as an individual, if you've got aspirations to either move across the organisation or up within your own profession, you'll be able to select aspirational jobs to be able to kind of then see what further development you need for your future posts that you may wish to move into. I spoke earlier about data-driven decisions. So that competency profile that you've just seen, we're able to take the data from that right across the organisation and roll those up into really useful reports for our senior leadership teams. And with these kind of give us areas of focus. So the green bars show you where people are proficient to a level of where they're supposed to be, and the red is the gaps that kind of exist. And the red bit is where we start to find is the bit that we find really interesting, because that's where we start to kind of develop our future L&D plans, our future people development plans, and more importantly, things around recruitment and retention. That's where we start to kind of use that evidence and that data to influence the types of decisions we're making in those areas. Because obviously that's the kind of area that we've got gaps in, and that's the area that requires our main attention. I spoke earlier about learning philosophy. Now, I'm sure most of us are familiar with the 70-20-10 approach to learning. And as an organisation, up until about 2 years ago, we were an established college within the Met Office, training our operational forecasters. And we was very kind of traditional in our approach to L&D. It was very much training courses. We were a function that the organisation used to come to and say, I want 5 of this, 6 of that, can you go and get it for us, please? And with the introduction of our strategy, we restructured and became the people development team. We're much more focused now on development being linked through to organisational performance. So no longer are we this kind of order takers with regards to learning and development. We're much more around performance consultancy. And we've started to focus on this 70-20-10 as part of our learning philosophy within the Met Office. And the 70-20-10, the 70-20 area of experiential learning is where the communities of practice have really started to add value into the organisation. But this has required us to kind of look at our L&D culture and start to change how the organisation views us. And I'm kind of sure people here today are aware that culture change hasn't happened overnight, and we are very much on that journey at the moment. But we're definitely making inroads into the organisation seeing us as a partner rather than as a service provider. One of the ways that we're influencing the senior leadership teams here is kind of looking at sustainable solutions. This is where, again, communities of practice are really playing a key role in this, because, you know, I'll go into communities of practice in a little bit more in depth in a second, but it's a sustainable solution, not only from a cost factor, but stuff that's lasting, you know. Theory's great, training is great, but how are people given the opportunity to actually apply that in the work setting, to really embed the learning that goes on and then able to share that within that communities of practice to maintain standards and upskill and reskill people right across the organisation. So evolution of an L&D ecosystem. 2 questions I asked my team recently was, what is learning and who should be involved? Now, very, very big L&D questions, right? And there is no right answer. But for us, it's about what's the answer for us in the Met Office, what does learning mean to us in the Met Office, and who should be involved. And up until probably only 18 months ago, it was very much the learner and the trainer, i.e. our team. And what we're looking at now is kind of really involving line managers and the organisation and heads of profession to really own the whole L&D ecosystem and recognise that everyone's got a responsibility here. Maybe people can relate to this, but development conversations in my organisation up until recently have been very much at the start of the performance year. What training do you want to do? Here's a course, go and do it. And using those tools now, we're starting to understand that actually it isn't just about training. Obviously training plays a part, but how are you actually creating learning in the flow of work? How are you creating learning that's continual? How are you leveraging other people and expertise across the organisation? How are you part of this ecosystem? How are you being accountable? And it comes back to the communities of practice and the role they're playing. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the 7 Cs model. This is taken from Andy Lancaster, head of CIPD, learning at CIPD. In his recent book around driving performance, he talks about the 7 Cs of social learning communities or communities of practice. And one of those is about having a cause. So why does a community of practice exist? What are you there for? Are people involved in it? You know, we all need a purpose, we all need a reason to be. And so cause is a very key part of why people attend communities of practice. And does it fit the culture? You know, have a look around your organisation. You might have an organisational culture, but one of the things we've identified within the Met Office is we've also got these little subcultures right across different professions. So we've got real academia within our science profession. You've kind of got in our kind of services industries, completely different cultures. And understanding the culture of your community of practice really helps you understand what you need to do as you start to kind of create some of these other 7 Cs ideas. So the conditions. Do you have a virtual environment? Do you have a physical environment? Understanding how best people work and how they connect is a really, really key component of communities of practice. And cadence, fancy word for tempo, but the kind of content that you're putting into your community of practice, the frequency that you meet is really important because it needs to fit the culture. Are you providing too much information too quick? Is it an overload? And for me, cadence and getting the drumbeat right of your community of practice is a really key factor into having a successful community. And content. Is the content right for the audience, right? It's fairly straightforward and fairly simple. Are you providing it in the right medium, right format? And again, is it the right tempo? Are you putting stuff out too quickly, too often? Is it digestible? Is it available in the flow of work? Or are you putting out kind of 150-page PDFs for people to read? Understanding what your audience needs. And also around content, who's creating it? You know, is the community creating that stuff? Is it co-creation? Is it co-curation? Involving individuals within the community to actually draft their own content is a really great way of getting engagement. You know, thought leadership is a really, really key component of the 7 Cs model. And contributions. You know, who's putting their stuff out there? Is it top down? Is it bottom up? Is it kind of a flat playing field? Who's getting the recognition? Who's getting the credit within the community of practice? You know, we all like a pat on the back once in a while. It doesn't have to be remunerated. It can be the simple, actually, a like of a bit of content. Someone sharing, you know. I think, you know, in this day and age of social media, using some of the kind of key things that drive Twitter and everything else, building those into communities of practice can really help get that engagement going. So that's Andy's 7 Cs. So what we did in the Met Office, we kind of took these 7 Cs models. I thought, yeah, these are really good, but do we need some kind of structure? So we created what's called a Community of Practice Charter, and I think for us, you know, you can go one or two ways with communities of practice. You can kind of set the right environment and let them grow organically. We found within the organisation, we're civil service, we love a process, we love a bit of structure, and we created this Community of Practice Charter, and the concept of this is everyone signs up to it. The head of profession owns this. It's reviewed on an annual basis. But what it does, it gives the community a bit of focus and a bit of a purpose for being. And within here, we kind of also established, you know, what are people's roles within this? Do you rotate? How do you keep it fresh? What are your key kind of objectives for the year? You know, treating it in terms of linking this through to performance of the organisation, linking some of the objectives of the communities of practice to organisational key objectives has been a really, really successful thing for us in getting some longevity out of our communities of practice. So how have we used Totara and how have we used kind of the software and technology to support and underpin some of these communities? So Totara, and like I say, other LMSs are available. They have a part of their software stack is a piece of kit called Totara Engage. And it moves away from the kind of formal learning of, you know, where you book a course, you do a course, it's recorded, and it enables organisations and enables employees within that organisation to create their own content and share their own content and build playlists of content. It has the notion of hashtags, so you can link things that's searchable. It's got the notion of workspaces, so you can have it quite closed to a limited group, or you can have it on an open platform for the whole organisation for search as well. And it draws on those experiences of kind of social media where you've got the ability to like and comment and share these bits of content that are created, and quite often it can be absolutely anything. It can be a link to a webinar, it can be an infograph. You know, in terms of the content that's being shared within our communities, they come in all different types of format, and it's been a really useful tool for us. And as I mentioned, you can kind of, with your own resources, you can start to create playlists of resources. So rather than kind of me having to book on a course of my own development, I can really search for a topic that I want, whether that's through kind of learning how to present, still not quite there, or building other pieces of learning for your organisation. But yeah, I really love this tool. I kind of think it's been something for us in terms of, in this day and age where people are really time poor, being able to have access to kind of learning at the point of need and in the flow of work is kind of really starting to shift the organisation that I work in. As I mentioned before, we're really traditional in our approach. You know, development equals a training course, and we're starting to shift mindsets as a result of this, particularly this tool, but kind of our L&D philosophy on top of this. And what's also nice with the Totara is it comes with a Teams integrated app. So no longer are people having to exit their kind of usual working platform. Most of us are in Slack or Teams or some other environment at the moment. We're able to access a lot of our kind of learning in the flow of work directly through our Teams app. So I could be having a conversation with one of my peers and say, oh, I saw this thing the other day, it's really good, and I can pull that into the conversation and it can be pinned within that chat and within that conversation, which I think is a really nice development over the last short while from Totara. And what's really nice about it is you can configure it to fit your own employee brand. So whilst kind of this is very much a Totara app, we've got it branded within our own kind of system to really speak to our own employees. So actually we don't call it Engage anymore, we call it Collaborate, because we use a lot of Microsoft tools, and Microsoft have their own Engage product. So trying to avoid some of that conflict, which is again a really nice feature of this app. So what are the benefits it's brought? Kind of we're starting to see greater engagement in learning, kind of starting to see greater engagement within our team. Sorts of conversations have definitely changed over the last couple of years. Conversations we're having with our leadership team now is no longer about what training courses have you got. It's very much, I've got this business problem. You know, we introduced a new role, a performance consultant role within my team about a little over a year ago. And the performance consultants are starting to take a real systemic approach to kind of business performance and business problems. And so that greater engagement, not only from our management, but also individuals within their learning, is kind of being recognised within some of our customer survey scores and stuff like that. But more importantly, the efficiencies. So as a manager within the L&D team within the organisation, being able to kind of show evidence back up to my senior leadership team, the ones that hold the purse strings, that we're reducing cost and time to train and develop people, is obviously a great way of gaining credibility and integrity within the organisation, and enables me to kind of ask for more money, ask for more time, ask for more investment, and that can only bring rewards for not only my team but the organisation as a whole. As I showed earlier, the valuable metrics, again, this isn't just about L&D or kind of people development for us. We're starting to see how some of these metrics are driving things like demand management, the sort of work we're kind of going out to market to tender for and kind of challenge for. Have we got the right capability in the organisation to meet those future pieces of work? If not, can we develop it in time to deliver against that? And those valuable metrics is really something that I'm kind of really proud of, that we're starting to kind of realise as a result of the work we've been doing over the last 2 years. And increased business performance, right? Who doesn't work in an organisation that wants to increase its performance? And I think the communities of practice are playing a really key role in that. And as a captive audience, we've got very, very senior people sponsoring these communities of practice and leading them. You know, we get together quite frequently, and I've got access to quite senior people in the organisation, and having that audience to be able to influence and kind of talk about the things we want to do and actually get that buy-in is really enabling us then to spread the message of what we want to do within the organisation and kind of onboard the organisation into our processes. So yeah, it's a very, very key benefit for us in terms of business performance, because like I say, it gains the credibility of the team, which, you know, no longer am I hearing the words, it's just L&D anymore. You know, I'm starting to hear us as a valued partner, which is kind of a position where we've longed to be for a long, long time. So that's a very whistle-stop tour of communities of practice. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions?
I'm from Exeter. Communities of practice is an academic term as well.
Yes.
So I wonder if you talk to a business school in Exeter about how they would study you or comment on what you're doing.
Great question. Cheers, Will. So Will just mentioned he's from Exeter. He's about talking to some of our academic partners, because obviously communities of practice again is an academic term as well. We haven't engaged with them yet, Will, but it's a really good takeaway for me from today. And I'll chat to you afterwards and we'll see if we can get some names together, okay?
Fine, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you again.